how you are involved in this whole lovely dimension. And if it helps, then what are you most proud of in your work? And why is it good that you're here with us today on this stage, OK? Can you please start?
Yes, sure.
OK, excellent.
So, thank you. I'm the founder of Retest, and Retest is a company that is a startup that is concerned with bringing AI into test automation. And this all started with a PhD and getting customer feedback. We were able to do quite a lot of pivots. So earlier on, I presented some tool that we created that is open source, and this is essentially based on all the customer feedback we got and how we can provide the highest value to the customer using AI. And so I've been personally in that since 2010, being concerned with AI in testing, and I was before concerned with AI since 2008. So.
I'm Jennifer Bodine. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Pink Lion AI. We're funded by Google, so we're a Gradient AI portfolio company, which means we work with Google and a lot of the big organizations as well as smaller companies to create an integration layer for AI. And we really focus on, as you heard from Phil and some of the other folks today, humanizing AI and making sure it's doing the right things and focusing on good solutions and ways to utilize it in your organizations for everyone.
Hi, I'm Jana, and yeah, I'm here today because I started hanging out with some really smart people who were really smart about AI, and I'm a passionate software tester, so that kind of rubbed off on me. I'm curious about everything, so I'd like to steal Jason's tagline of AI curious, and so I've been really looking at just the implications of software testing and using AI in software testing as a software tester, and what does that really mean?
Before we go on with the introduction, thank you so far for the 50% of the team. We are waiting for the questions through Slido. So if there's anything related to AI or testing, please put your questions in now, because it will appear and we will be talking about those. Keep going. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm Diony Santiago. I'm a test architect at Ultimate Software. Probably for the last 10 years or so, I have been focused on improving our efficiency as testers. So I'm very passionate about test automation. I love building different testing frameworks and tools. And so when I first started getting involved with AI and testing, it almost opened up a whole new world of possibilities and just creativity and innovation that is possible with this technology. So that actually motivated me to go beyond and actually get a master's focused on AI and testing. And I'm also working on my PhD right now.
I'm Kevin Piles. I work at Domo. Domo brings all of your data together from everywhere, and then we're able to visualize that data and share the data, which sets us up perfectly for artificial intelligence and machine learning on data. And I've also been in testing for over 10 years now, and when I heard Jason and Tariq talking about AI, I wanted to get involved because I think AI is part of our future as testers, and I didn't want to get left behind.
Yeah, we didn't want to leave you behind either. So Tariq King, I think for me, my first exposure to AI was really in college. I took a course as an undergraduate, and it was a combined graduate and undergraduate course, and I actually really didn't like AI at all. It was just very hard and very difficult. I ended up getting a good grade in the course, but the professor wanted to down my grade at some point because I was kind of borderline. You know, in the capacity of having been a test architect and then going into leadership, I think for me, I've seen where a lot of our inefficiencies and a lot of our lack of innovation has stemmed throughout the years, where we're doing a lot of the same things over and over. And I just saw an opportunity as our company was looking to invest in the future of testing to kind of improve the state of the art and to do something different. And so that kind of led to the story that you guys heard today with developing tools and kind of leading the team in that direction to use AI to improve our testing process in whatever shape or form. That could be test generation, it could also be test prioritization. There's a lot of different problems that we've explored using this technology to solve. So.
Thank you very much. We don't really have a frame for this panel. Anyone can give their thoughts to any of the questions. The only time frame is that. But now, luckily, the questions are arriving. So let's see the first one that already has 11 likes. What do you think about AI as a service? Can it be a near future offering from big tech companies?
That's a Jennifer question.
Definitely, you start.
Okay, this is actually something that we do. So we have AI as a service in testing, but not AI in general, but with a specific task. So what our AI is doing is essentially kind of exploratory testing the website. So you can imagine it like an intelligent crawler. So it kind of tries to execute the website and first of all find defects like obvious defects, and then what it does is it generates a golden master or various golden masters of the different states of the websites, and you can use that for test automation. So what the result is after having the AI go at your website is you get tests that you can then use within your CI/CD environment. So that is something that we actually do.
I would say for all of you that are thinking about AI and how to leverage it is first start with what's the problem I'm trying to solve. So I always tell people, what's a pain point or what are you trying to solve? And then know that first. Once you understand that, educate yourself on what solutions are out there that you can leverage. As Jeremiah said, he owns Retest. You saw Jeff put up a slide with some other folks, and there's some really great solutions out there, but educate yourselves on what those solutions do, how you leverage them best inside your organization. I think what we're cautious of is, like with anything, having people implement something, not understanding what the goal is or what they want to do with it, having a bad experience, and then thinking AI isn't real or it doesn't help me. So before you go about that for big companies and any service you'll engage in, make sure that you're solving a problem and that it helps with pain, would be my perspective on that. But I do think we'll see it. We'll see it more and more. Companies are becoming educated. You as consumers should spend time getting educated on who's out there. Because I like to talk about like organic. When we talked about organic products or food, at first it wasn't highly regulated and no one knew what the standard was or what it meant. Same thing with artificial intelligence. There's a lot of companies out there that now have put AI in their titles. That you have to be cautious of. What kind of AI is it? Does it help you? Is it real AI? What's built behind the scenes?
Okay, let's go on. We have a very, very famous and good question there. How do you decide that your project needs AI or not?
I can talk about this, and I think there was another question that, I'm going to kind of kill two questions with this one answer, because there's also the other question, as a simple tester, how can I push my big multinational company to consider AI testing? And first of all, like Jennifer said, you got to find your pain point. But for me, it came to return on investment, and not only for my company, but for myself as a tester. So I started looking at AI when I realized, oh my gosh, I don't want to be doing this anymore. And there were AI bots out there that could do it for me. And that's not necessarily saying, they were replacing me, but there were routine tasks that were just expensive for the company to do. So example is Carnival Corporation, and looking at when we were sending testers out to sea. That's expensive. That's revenue I'm taking away from the company because a guest could be in that stateroom. That's time that I'm away from my family cruising on a cruise ship, which sounds more glorious than what it is. Just I'll throw that out there. So I came to look at all the things that you know, what were my pain points and how can I build a business case for bringing AI in? And that was the big thing.
Yeah, so for me, like the focus of if your project needs AI comes down to the alternative, right? Like the alternative to using AI to solve your problem is a procedural solution, right? That we're accustomed to. We write code and algorithms to specify a solution to a given problem. In some cases, there's some problems that are very hard for you to actually write a procedural solution to. This whole idea of driving cars or even flying a plane or something, a lot of these real-time decision-making problems are very difficult for you to write down the instructions to the machine to actually carry it out. And it's actually a lot easier for you to solve that problem by using data and using examples and training. It takes some effort still, but what we've seen that is very, very good solutions to those problems. So a big part of it is that problem space that you're trying to tackle and how easy or how hard it might be for you to do a procedural solution for it. If it's going to be very difficult, then an AI solution is better. The other part of that I'd also just mentioned is that a lot of the cases where we see AI being very, very useful are cases where human judgment or like the human opinion is a big factor in it, right? And those are things where a machine on its own doesn't really have an opinion. It doesn't really lend itself to any particular bias, if I would use that word, for solving a given problem. And so a lot of the time as well, like if you need to simulate a human's judgment, some sort of an expert, whether it be a doctor or a lawyer or someone, like you can use AI to simulate those things, those kind of what are more qualitative problems as opposed to quantitative problems. AI is useful for that because you just get the humans to exercise their opinion about whatever it is, and the machine can simulate that judgment.
So one thing I want to add to that, it's really important to we're really good at exploratory testing, so it's really important to explore what's out there with AI. So this is a little bit kind of the last question as well. Some of the companies like Google have something called AutoML, which actually makes it really easy for anyone that, even if you're not super knowledgeable in how the AI works, you can go and feed it your data, and you can essentially try out different algorithms. So essentially try to explore the various different algorithms, explore your data, because I'm sure you have a lot of data. So to help you answer, can I actually apply AI to some problem? The first thing you got to ask is, what's the data behind this problem? And once you have the data, then you can start to explore the different algorithms.
So I'd like to answer the next question.
Whoa. Okay, we have a very good question there, but has some false parts in it. Let's see the question. It's not a coincidence that all 6 of you are from the USA. Please put your hands up if you are not from the USA. Yes, exactly. So we're very happy to welcome Deutschland as well in the conversation. Still, I think the question is quite valid. How far is Europe and the rest of the world behind the United States of America? The word is yours.
Thank you. So yeah, I take this as a compliment in terms of my speaking my English. I hope so. So I'm not actually from the US. So we have that in Germany as well, and we see a lot of companies from other parts of the world. From Israel, many startups sitting. A lot in there are some Indian and also I think China has a couple of startups. So I think it's very very well spread. However, I think, or my impression is that people from the US in general are very good at doing marketing. So what you see is that those are the most speakers and the best speakers and some of the best companies doing marketing and communication. So we have a lot of other people around the world working on those problems, but the guys from the US just generally do that very good.
So I'll say something because it's my fault that most people up here on the AI panel are from the US, I suppose. But In terms of the world, this is something that I think a lot of countries are behind, and there's a lot of work that's been going on. You know, there's a company called DiffBlue over in the UK. It was one of the first companies that I actually found beyond the three that I initially saw, and actually quite a lot of folks that I run into that are trying things in this space in the startup world are actually not necessarily from the US at all. I was in Romania earlier this year, and I was in Tokyo, and you know, we had panels like this in both of those places, and I met people and sat on panels with people from many different countries. I think what is a little bit more unique here is, you know, relating to the testing space, especially like right now, there are a lot of folks in the US that are paying a lot of attention to the testing problem, right? And they're trying things. And it's not that this isn't happening in other countries, because it is as well. But right now it's kind of something that's at the forefront. I think, you know, Jason and myself and Jennifer and folks have, I don't call it a marketing thing, but we've kind of just stirred up some interest in this for sure. So that's one thing. I don't think necessarily that anyone is any further behind than anyone else. Like, I think we're all behind, to be honest. Because especially when you look at some of the other areas, right? Like even if you look at security and stuff like that, the hackers are using this stuff and have been using this stuff for a long time. And we as ethical hackers or as testers are needing to catch up, right? Because they've recognized the power of this technology. So it's not really behind in terms of geographically or nationally or however you want to spin that. I think just as a community focused on this problem, we are a little bit behind, and now we're kind of getting some traction on that. So.
Yeah, and I would say just don't ignore it, no matter where you live. I think it's a topic where if you haven't educated yourself on it, go there and start learning and asking the questions, as Phil said. We just all need to not ignore it and get involved and, you know, educate ourselves around what it is and what's out there.
Can I add real quick onto that? I think it's a lot about perspective as well. What is your perspective on AI, and how do you want to be perceived within your own company? We have the internet now, so anything that we have in the United States or anywhere else is now available. And especially when it comes to algorithms and models, and you can get to it just like we can, and you can start it up in your own company. That's what I was sharing earlier today as well. So are you further behind? That's irrelevant. It's what are you going to do with what's available to you?
Okay, thank you very much. P.S. I think this question was a compliment on your English, so congratulations. Let's go on. It's funny because we're talking about AI for testing, and the next question is, how would you test AI? We're listening.
So I know we all have opinions on this one. So I figured I would kind of break the problem down into kind of two different categories. So the first one is, how do you test AI that is static? So AI that you train it for one particular problem, and it doesn't necessarily learn anymore after that, and then you just put it in production and you start using it. And then there's the dynamic AI, right? So AI that is capable of learning in production, and that is capable of being fed more data, perhaps from your actual users of your system. So I'll talk about the first one, and I'll let everybody else here talk about the second one, because I know Tariq specifically is really excited about the dynamic AI. But for the static AI, and actually to some degree the dynamic AI, it all boils down to the data, right? So AI inherently is biased based on the training data that it was used to train the AI. So there could be bias in how much data, what bias in the data, training data that you actually collected. And there could also be bias in how it was labeled. So really, to test AI, you have to become a data scientist. And you have to think about the problem that the AI is trying to solve. And you have to consider the various different possibilities and different things you have to take into account in the training set, and make sure that the training set is representative of the various different cases that the AI needs to be able to handle. So that's at a very high level.
Yeah, and in terms of the dynamic aspects that Dione is talking about, it really boils down to how do we test a dynamically adaptive system, like a system that is unpredictable. And as you know, with anything that's unpredictable, my kids come to mind. The way that you test it, and it is through a combination of, yes, running some tests as it operates in its natural environment, but also through a lot of monitoring and observing and building those mechanisms into the system, right? Because since the behavior at runtime can change, since it's very unpredictable, the only thing that you can try to do is to put some safeguards in place, number one, or put some runtime mechanisms for validating that behavior. We talked a little bit about this in the tutorial, but there's a lot of work out there around testing dynamically adaptive systems and testing in production, runtime testing. A lot of these areas are, ripe for the picking in terms of research approaches or different practical ways of actually testing systems like this.
Microphone. Anyway, so how would you test AI? And I think this really comes down to how I got started being fascinated with AI, because I heard some talks on AI and I was like, but wait, it can run all these tests faster than my brain can work, and you need all of this data, but then do you need AI to generate the data that feeds into the AI? And then if you had somebody that was writing this AI, do you need AI to test the AI? And the amount of layers that quickly compounded, I was like mind blown. Yes, this is awesome. So this is, I know, isn't it? It's fun. Humans. This is where I'd like people to understand that you think AI, the word AI is scary. Well, when you start learning more about AI, you find out there's different types of AI too. And so now not only do I have to worry about AI, but I have to worry about all these different types of AI and then all the different types of data that go into all these, anyway, you get the idea. But we as humans can look at a lot of this and test the AI. That's why I don't panic about losing my job as a software tester. I'd be more concerned as somebody developing that AI, because I develop it, the bot goes, does its thing. Now what am I to do next? It's going to be the humans that are going to be there testing it to make sure and validating those results.
Thank you. We can go on? Okay, there were two questions that have been passing on the second place to each other, but at this moment we have 22 likes for. If you had a full test environment, to which aspect of it would you apply AI first and why?
Yeah, I think that we're going to hear this answer a lot for a lot of these questions where it's almost like, where do we start? Where would we tackle first in this whole space? And I think you've heard it probably a couple times already that you first need to figure out what problem you're trying to solve. You don't just take up a hammer and take it to a problem, right? Like sometimes we do. And that's what I feel people try to do with this technology is like, oh, AI is a hammer, let me use it for everything. So if I had this test environment, like where would I start? Well, I mean, I would start wherever I had a difficult problem that I was trying to solve. If I had to give an answer here, I think for me, I really think that there's a lot of ways that we could apply artificial intelligence to everything that we do in production, right? To make testing more efficient and more effective. So, like, my passion is really thinking about how can I leverage all that information from production. And so if I had a test environment that I could put out there that could accurately be a replica of production, I would love to be able to track a lot of the user scenarios that happen in production or real scenarios on that real data, and start to be able to build a testing system that could learn from that, right? Because that's what we do all the time. We test in a lab, and after we take it from the lab, we go to production, and of course the lab was different from production, and now we have issues, right? And so I think where AI becomes powerful is that if you can put the eyes and ears, or whatever you want to call it, in that real environment without violating any laws or offending any customers or whatever. But if I had access to all that information to be able to mine it and to be able to use it to do more effective testing, then that's kind of where I would start with all those beautiful production logs. So.
We actually talk about shifting our paradigm from what we have today to AI first. So once you figure out your big pain points, then look at if AI solves that problem and leverage it there, because as Jana said, it's very efficient in solving really big problems and helping with some of the tasks as testers we do that cause fatigue. Right? When you're looking at the same thing over and over and over again, and you're testing it multiple times a day, multiple times a week, sometimes we stop seeing, right, what the problem was. The AI doesn't get fatigued. So, and it's a lot less brittle right now with the tools available than traditional, even open source automation. So, you look at it like tools, like Tariq said. We look at what can AI do, then we layer it down and say what can open source traditional automation do, and then we say what should we use our most valuable resource, which is our humans, to actually validate and test, and you use all of those. So it's just like a kit. We've just added AI along with manual and automation.
Thank you, perfect. I was kind of hoping this question will have time. How can you say if AI is actually intelligent?
So I can go with that. Actually, you can't, because we don't know what. So nobody so far has come up with a term or a definition of intelligent that everyone agrees on. This is also the reason why we have the Turing test. It's kind of a different testing, like a gold master testing itself. So in that regard, you take the human as the golden master. We don't know what intelligence is, but we agreed that humans are intelligent, like for the most part. And so the idea is that you compare the machine to the human, and if you can't find a difference, then by that consideration, the machine has to be intelligent as well. So this is how we designed the Turing test. At the time, we only had chats, so it was designed as a chat competition. But this is the idea behind it. And frankly, I don't have any better idea than that. So we can't say right now it's obviously not intelligent. But if we have a view into the future, into, I don't know, 50 years, we can't say at one point it becomes actually intelligent, because we don't know what that means.
Yeah, I also don't know. This is one of those things where I guess you can't talk about intelligence without talking about different levels of intelligence, right? Because we see that a lot. We talked about this in the tutorial as well. Where, you know, when you start to think about intelligence, and it's not just humans, there's animals that exhibit intelligence that we consider to be very intelligent things. So without that definition, and I think if we could agree on that definition, we would have a starting point. But I think that we might agree that there are definitely different levels of intelligence. And at some point, what we're doing here is trying to simulate intelligence. And so even if you might not be able to say that it was actually intelligent, if you can simulate intelligence enough that you would not know the difference between this machine and a human, then it might not even matter that it's not actually intelligent, because you actually just can't tell the difference. So it could be artificially intelligent or actually intelligent. If you can't tell the difference, then what does it matter? It's, from your perspective, it is doing what a human or what an animal with that level of intelligence might do. And I think at that point, you have to step back and say, regardless of whether or not it is actually intelligent, you have to stop and say that this thing is useful, right? Because one of the things that we struggle with in general, and Phil talked about scaling humans in terms of, you know, our collaboration at scale. Well, one of the challenges with that is that in some cases, humans with certain types of intelligence or certain levels of knowledge are not available at scale, right? Like experts in certain fields are not available at scale, and so we suffer as a result of that, right? This is why medicine costs so much, or to see a doctor costs so much, or any kind of expert in a particular field. Sometimes there's just one or two of them, and if we can get this technology to simulate that type of intelligence for us, then it becomes useful regardless of if it's actually intelligent or not.
Okay. Sure.
Just one more thing. I want to geek out for a moment. So yeah, I think this is a really, really interesting question. And for me, when I first started learning about machine learning, so I actually took my very first machine learning course in college, I went into it thinking like, this is going to be awesome. Like, I'm going to learn how to teach machines to learn by themselves. And then as I actually started to unravel this stuff and learn about the technologies that are currently available and the different algorithms, you start to realize that it's all just math, right? It's all just showing the computer a bunch of examples, and then it figures out through various different things like gradient descent. If you could look that up. It's not magic. It just figures out patterns in the data that is being fed into the algorithm. So I would argue that what we have today is not necessarily intelligent. It's basically just creating this connection between what you're showing it and the output. Now, I do think when you actually start to look at things like reinforcement learning, which is how self-driving cars are trained, that's when you actually start to get into that realm of, wow, this stuff is actually, we're actually seeing some traces of possible intelligence here in the future. And the reason is that reinforcement learning doesn't necessarily work off of data. It works off of just trial and error and being rewarded for when the AI actually finds something that is a good action in the world. And then there's even research on inverse reinforcement learning, which I think is even more exciting, where AI is starting to learn from just watching some human do a task. And I think once we start seeing the AI learn without data and just by observing us doing some task, that's when we can start to, I think, that's when we're going to start to see that inflection point between the AI that we have today and getting towards actual intelligence.
Yeah, I would disagree with your statement that reinforcement learning and even those things are learning without data. I think that that's all still data. The difference is that the data is generated through an action, right? But it's still data. And I would also play devil's advocate again and say, well, I think that the way that these machines are learning is actually similar to how humans learn, right? Because we humans learn by trial and error all the time, and I always go back to my kids. They do something and it doesn't work, and they realize that they didn't achieve some level of satisfaction from whatever they were trying to do, and then they try it again, and they're doing that kind of constantly. The difference here is like that I think that we are the ones that specify what that reward function looks like for these machines, whereas children kind of can formulate it on their own. And I think maybe Phil was touching on this in his talk, where again, it could boil down to data, but when we see machines actually becoming creative by coming up with things on their own, then I think we can start talking about actual intelligence, right? But I think for now, like, as you said, these machines are just really doing what we teach them to do. But I just differ on that point of the data, right? I think when we see machines, and you've already, well, I don't want to give away any parts of your talk, but even our idea of that creativity and what it means to be creative is something that still also relates to data, and that machines can come up with something new, because if they've been trained on something, they can usually start to generate something on their own that they haven't been taught, right? So it's just a very fuzzy line. Good question, but I think no one's going to agree on what intelligence actually means today. But, it's all good.
Great questions, great answers. I love this panel. Okay, let's see. Don't you think that we are going too fast about AI? Most of, well, I assume software testers, but it can also be Star Wars testers, are still doing manual testing, but are we still afraid of AI taking our job? What do you think about that?
I think one of the important things, I think one of the important things to remember is to build AI, you need to know how to code and program and math and all the things, but to actually train using some of the tools that are available to you, you don't need to know how to do that. So there's a lot of talks out there right now when you listen to people talking about AI that when you start leveraging it as a tool, that to train your bots or your AI that you have in-house just requires you having really good functional knowledge of your users, what you're trying to accomplish, and how you would test that system. So you can literally do that by labeling and then creating scenarios with zero code. So you don't need to know how to code to use AI. So one of the things we hear a lot now is AI is actually bringing back the need for really strong people who understand their applications, their systems, and how to test those.
I was just going to say no.
Wow, thank you.
Wow, epic. That's Kevin Powles. So I actually don't think that we need to be scared about AI taking our jobs per se. We get worried about, so do I think we're going too fast? If that means that we're jumping to conclusions too fast, then yes. I think that whenever there's technology that comes out that potentially threatens a lot of the way that we're accustomed to doing things, that humans have this nature to be resistant, right? But at the end of the day, usually because we want to be able to have easier lives, like the technology usually wins, right? I'm sure that there were, bank tellers in the bank that were fighting the automatic teller machine, right? And look how much ATMs we have, and we walk into places and we're using kiosks everywhere, and we wonder what we would do without them, right? Like when we walk in and we see a long line in the airport versus an empty machine, we run to the empty machine gladly because we want to check in and get to our flight, right? So technology transforms the way that we live all the time. And AI is going to do that. It's no different from any other technology in the sense of we can leverage it to make us better. But it is different in the sense that there are some elements of uncertainty that may not crop up with other areas, right? Or be as unknown to us because we actually just don't know what these machines are doing. They're pretty unpredictable at times, and that, in that sense, to me, it's also a testing problem. But yeah, we're doing a lot of manual testing. There's still going to be a lot of manual testing to be done. Software is still going to suck, and we're going to still need to test it. And I don't think we got to be worried about our jobs, but I guess we'll find out tomorrow if we need to worry or not, right? With Diony's keynote.
I want to add to that and say that I think, there's an example in Africa where people don't have landlines and they go straight from having nothing to having mobiles. And you can have the same thing with AI. Like you don't have automation at all, and you don't need to learn automation, and AI just generates tests for you. So you can just skip the middle step in between and go straight from nothing to full automation using AI. So I think there's another path that doesn't include people learning to having the need to learn to code or automation at all.
Okay, I think we have time for a short question and answer because we have 3.5 minutes left, but this is also a very popular question. Do you think AI is suitable for non-functional testing?
Yeah, definitely. And if you start thinking about anything non-functional, whether it be accessibility, performance, usability, a lot of these problems boil down to that statement earlier about human judgment, especially the whole idea of usability and intuitiveness and stuff like that. that's definitely one that is in that realm. And so training a machine by using humans that can pass their judgment on whether or not an application is usable or trustworthy, that problem is actually something that we've experimented with and seen good results. Accessibility testing as well is one that's pretty ripe for the picking, because once you can train these agents to explore an application, then there's tools that you can run to kind of help determine if there's accessibility issues on each page in the application. There's still a lot more to accessibility testing that needs to be done there, and we're actually looking at doing some automated performance testing using some of these techniques as well. So yeah, non-functional testing is definitely a broad category that can be applied to artificial intelligence.
Okay, that was very efficient. So we have time for the last one. Can AI be helpful in testing embedded systems?
Anybody?
1 minute, 40 seconds.
All right. Speed run. You got embedded systems at your?
Yes.
Wow, this is going to be good. We still have time for 10 more questions.
No, you can use it for various uses. So Kevin's absolutely right. Yes, you can.
Yeah,
okay,
there's actually a lot of work on embedded systems in general. And the short answer is yes. We don't have time to kind of get deeper.
Okay, I'm sorry, but that also has 24 likes, and then we really do the closing. How will AI affect the academic education for IT people in the future? We need short answers.
Yeah, so it says how, the answer is not yes.
How?
So like we've been saying up here, it's not just about something that you need to learn to use this stuff. A lot of this stuff is being built around a lot of tools that are very easy to use and easy to consume, and that's only going to get easier. You don't need to understand exactly how your pressure cooker works and the mechanics of it to use it, right? And so, you don't have, and not everyone needs a PhD. If Jason were here, he would be all over this. You don't need a PhD to be able to use this technology, or even to build it in some cases. So it's fine.
I would be very happy if you would close everyone, but it's just one word, which shows your connection and your relation to AI. What would that word be?
Effectiveness.
Lovely.
Humanize.
Wow, thank you.
Curiosity.
Great.
Vulnerability.
Lovely.
Passion.
Passion. And yours?
Future.
Future. Big applause for our panelists. Thank you so very much for sharing all of your valuable thoughts with us. Thank you for the great questions. Tariq King, Jennifer Bonin, Kevin Files, Jana Lufren, Diony Santiago. Thank you so much.